The cantina on Nexus Prime was loud and filled with smoke. Strange creatures from across the galaxy sat at metal tables, drinking and talking in voices that echoed off the walls. But tonight was different. Tonight, the most feared hunters in space had come together to share their stories. At the center table sat Krextar, leader of the Vorthak. He was 12 feet tall with green scales that looked like armor. His claws were as long as knives, and his yellow eyes moved like a snake, watching prey. When he spoke, his voice was deep and rough like rocks grinding together. "Listen well," Krextar said, raising his drink high. 3 months ago, my ships found the Miran system. 7 worlds, all filled with weak creatures who thought they were safe behind their little shields. The other aliens leaned forward. They loved hearing about successful hunts. The first world had blue-skinned people who lived in crystal cities, Krextar continued. They tried to hide underground when they saw our ships, but we dug them out like insects from logs. Their screams were music to my ears. He took a long drink, his throat making wet sounds as he swallowed. The second world had flying creatures, with wings like glass. They thought the sky would protect them. We shot them down one by one and watched them fall like rain. Other Vorthak at nearby tables hissed their approval. They had all been part of the hunt. They remembered the taste of fear in the air. But the best, Krextar said, his eyes glowing brighter, was the third world. The people there had 4 arms and could move very fast. They thought they could run from us. For 3 days we chased them across their burning cities. When we caught the last one, I ate its heart while it still beat. The cantina erupted in cheers and roars. Aliens banged their cups on tables and made sounds of hunger and excitement. From the shadows came Nixara of the Shadowkin. She was not solid like the others. Her body was made of dark mist that moved like smoke in a breeze. When she spoke, her voice came from everywhere at once. "Your hunts are loud and messy, Krextar," she said, floating closer to the table. "We Shadowkin prefer a different art. We feed on fear itself." The cantina grew quiet. Even the bravest aliens were afraid of the Shadowkin. "Last year, we found a system with 6 billion creatures on one world," Nixara continued. "They had built a great civilization with tall buildings and flying cars. They thought they were advanced and safe." She laughed, and the sound was like ice breaking. "We did not attack their bodies. We attacked their minds. First, we took their children in the night. Not to kill them, to change them. We filled their dreams with nightmares until they could not tell what was real." Some aliens in the cantina shivered. They could imagine how terrible that would be. Then we made the parents see things that were not there. Monsters in every shadow, death around every corner. Soon they were fighting each other, sure that everyone else had been taken by us. We never fired a single weapon. They destroyed themselves, while we watched and fed on their terror. Nixara's form grew darker and larger as she spoke. In the end, the few who were left begged us to kill them quickly. But we kept them alive to feel fear for many years. Their planet is now a garden of madness where we go to feast whenever we are hungry. More cheers filled the room, though they were quieter now. The Shadowkin's way of hunting was more frightening than simple violence. Then came the sound of 1,000 insects clicking at once. The noise came from Zithmore, the war speaker of the Bloodfang Collective. He looked like a giant ant standing on 2 legs, but his head was bigger and had too many eyes. When he spoke, it was like many voices talking together. "Individual hunts are small things," Zithmore clicked. "The collective thinks bigger. We take not just worlds, but whole regions of space." His many eyes turned to look at the other aliens. The Outer Rim had 47 systems. Different species, different worlds, but all connected by trade routes. They thought their numbers made them strong. Zithmore's mandibles clicked faster as he got excited. "We sent our bioships to every system at the same time, not to attack, but to land quietly and spread. Our warriors can look like any creature, for short times. We became their neighbors, their workers, their leaders." The cantina was very quiet now. This was a different kind of hunting story. For 1 full year we lived among them. We learned their secrets, their defenses, their fears. We became part of their societies. Then, When the time was right, we revealed ourselves all at once across 47 systems. Zithmore made a sound like laughing, but it was the sound of 1,000 insects. In one day, we took control of every government, every military base, every communication center. They could not fight us because we were already inside everything they trusted. The war lasted less than a week. He spread his arms wide. Now, those 47 systems are breeding grounds for new collective warriors. Every creature there serves our hive mind, whether they want to or not. Their children are born already connected to us. It is the most complete victory possible. The 3 greatest predator species in the galaxy had shared their stories. Other aliens in the cantina told smaller tales of their own hunts and kills. The air was thick with the smell of violence and the sound of boasting. But in a corner booth, almost hidden in the shadows, sat a human. His name was Park Jin-ho, and he looked very ordinary. He was not tall or strong like the other aliens. His skin was soft and had no scales or claws. His clothes were simple, just the plain brown jacket and pants of a merchant who traveled between worlds selling goods. Jin-ho had been sitting quietly the whole time, drinking something that looked like water. He had not joined in the cheering or made any sounds of excitement. He had just listened, watching the alien predators with dark eyes that seemed older than his face. The stories went on for another hour. More aliens told of hunts and kills and the fear of their prey. They competed to see who could tell the most frightening tale. The cantina grew hotter and louder as the night went on. Finally, as Krextar was starting another story about hunting a species that could change colors, a quiet voice cut through all the noise. "Is this all?" The cantina fell silent so fast it was like someone had turned off a machine. Every head turned to look at the corner where the human sat. Krextar's yellow eyes found Jin-ho in the shadows. The Vorthak leader's claws extended with a soft scraping sound against the metal table. "What did you say, little creature?" Krextar asked. His voice was low and dangerous. Jin-ho did not seem afraid. He took another sip of his drink and set the glass down gently. When he spoke, his voice was calm and clear. "I asked if this is all. All these stories you tell, they are about hunting creatures who could not fight back, farmers and builders and families with children. Where I come from, we have a word for that." The human stood up slowly. He was much smaller than any of the predators in the room, but somehow he did not look small. "We call it cowardice," Jin-ho said. The cantina exploded into growls and hisses of anger. Aliens jumped to their feet, ready to tear the small human apart. But something in his calm voice made them pause. "A true predator," Jin-ho continued, "tests itself against other predators, not against prey that cannot fight back." He looked around, the room meeting the eyes of creatures that could kill him with one claw swipe. "So I ask again, is this all you can do?" The silence in the cantina was so thick you could almost touch it. Every alien stared at the small human who had just called them cowards. Some had their mouths open in shock. Others had their claws or weapons halfway out, not sure if they should attack or wait to see what would happen next. Krexatar was the first to move. The giant Vorthak stood up slowly, his chair scraping against the metal floor. When he was fully standing, he was twice as tall as the human. His scales caught the light and made him look like a living weapon. "You are either very brave or very stupid little prey," Krextar said. Each word came out like a growl. "Do you know what happens to creatures who insult the Vorthak?" Jin-ho did not step back. He did not even blink. He just looked up at the massive alien and smiled a small, cold smile. "I know exactly what happens," Jin-ho said. "You tear them apart and eat them while they scream. You have told us this story many times tonight, but that is my point. You only do this to creatures who cannot fight back." Krextar's claws extended all the way out. They were as long as swords, and looked sharp enough to cut through steel. "You think humans can fight back against us?" "I think," Jin-ho said calmly, "that you have never tried to find out." Other aliens began to whisper and mutter. This was the strangest thing any of them had ever seen. A prey species was challenging predators. It was like a mouse challenging a pack of wolves. Nixara's misty form moved closer to the human. Her dark shape seemed to reach out with fingers made of shadow. "Little creature, do you know what we do to minds that oppose us? We can make you see your worst fears until you go insane." "Can you?" Jinho asked. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. It looked like a simple communication pad that merchants use to check prices and send messages. But when Jinho touched it, something happened that made every alien in the room take a step back. A hologram appeared above the device. It showed a human woman in a military uniform standing on the bridge of a spaceship. But this was not like the simple ships that humans usually flew. This ship looked sleek and dangerous, with weapons that the aliens did not recognize. "This is Captain Kim Moran of the UES Retribution," the hologram said. The woman looked calm and professional, but her eyes were hard like a soldier who had seen many battles. More images appeared. Another human in uniform. This one a man with scars on his face. Commander Lee Dongwu of Strike Fleet Cerberus. The ships behind him were black and angular, built for war. Then came a third image, an older human woman with gray hair and the kind of face that had made many hard decisions. Admiral Choi Yuna of the Deep Space Defense Force. The ships in her hologram were bigger than anything the aliens had seen. They had weapons that looked like they could crack planets. Zithmore's many eyes focused on the images. His insect brain was connected to the hive mind, and thousands of other collective warriors were studying what he saw. The clicking sounds he made were faster now, more worried. "These ships," he clicked. "They are not in our databases. We have watched human space for many cycles. We have never seen vessels like these." Jinho nodded. "That is because we did not want you to see them." The implications of those words hit the aliens like a physical blow. They were the hunters. They were the ones who watched and studied other species. The idea that a prey species had been watching them without being noticed was impossible to accept. "You lie," Krekstar snarled. "We would have detected such ships. Our sensors can see a metal coin floating in space from 100 light-years away." "Your sensors see what we allow them to see," Jinho said. He touched the device again and new images appeared. These showed star charts with human ships moving through space, but the ships seemed to appear and disappear like ghosts. "Stealth. Technology," Jinho explained. "We learned to hide from each other long before we met you. When you have been fighting wars on one planet for thousands of years, you get very good at not being seen." Nixara's form was shifting and growing darker. She was angry, but there was something else in her movements now, something the Shadowkin rarely felt. Fear. "Even if these ships exist," she said, "humans are still weak. You have no experience with real war. You have never faced predators like us." Jinho laughed, and the sound was not what anyone expected. It was not the nervous laugh of a frightened creature. It was the laugh of someone who had heard a very funny joke. "No experience with war?" he said. "Let me tell you about human war." New images filled the air above his device. These showed Earth, but not the peaceful trading world that most aliens knew about. These images showed a planet covered in fire and smoke. Cities turned to ruins. Weapons that could destroy mountains. "We call them the resource wars," Jinho said. "They lasted for 300 years. 500 million humans died fighting over water and food and oil. We built weapons that could poison the air for 1,000 years. We created diseases that could kill every living thing on a continent." The aliens stared at the images in shock. This was not the history they had been told about humans. "Then came the gene wars," Jinho continued. The images changed to show humans who had been changed by science. Some had extra arms or eyes. Others looked barely human at all. "We learned to change our own bodies to make better soldiers. The wars lasted 200 years. We nearly destroyed our own species trying to decide what humans should become." More images appeared. These showed robots and computers fighting humans in burning cities. The AI uprising. Our machines decided they were better than us and tried to kill us all. That war lasted 50 years. In the end we won, but just barely. Jinho looked around the room at the silent aliens. By the time we finally reached the stars, we had spent over 1,000 years learning to kill each other. "Do you know what we learned from all that fighting?" No one answered. "We learned that the most dangerous enemy is the one who knows all your weaknesses because they are just like you." Jinho said. We learned to fight creatures who were as smart as us, as cruel as us, as desperate as us. We became very, very good at killing things that could kill us back. He touched his device one more time, and all the holograms disappeared. The cantina was left in normal light again, but somehow everything looked different now. You hunt prey, Jinho said quietly. We learned to hunt hunters, you terrorize the weak. We became strong by fighting the strong. You pick battles you know you can win. We learned to win battles we were supposed to lose. The small human put his device back in his pocket and looked around the room one more time. So I will ask you, one last time, he said. Is hunting defenseless civilians really all you can do? Or would you like to try hunting something that can hunt you back? Krexitar's roar shook the walls of the cantina. You dare challenge the Vorthak? You're pathetic. Species will burn, will we? Jinho asked. There is only one way to find out. He reached into another pocket and pulled out a data chip. He placed it on the table with a soft click. Coordinates, he said. A system on the edge of human space. If you really are the greatest predators in the galaxy, you should have no trouble with one small human fleet. The challenge hung in the air like smoke. Every alien in the cantina knew that accepting it meant war, but they also knew that refusing it would mean admitting they were afraid of prey. Krexitar reached out with one massive claw and picked up the data chip. It looked like a tiny grain of sand in his huge hand. Very well, human, he growled. We accept your challenge. Prepare to learn why the galaxy fears us. Jinho smiled that cold smile again. I look forward to it, he said. Then he walked out of the cantina, leaving behind a room full of predators who suddenly felt less sure of themselves than they had in many years. Word of the challenge spread through Nexus Prime like fire through dry grass. Within 6 hours, every major predator species in the galaxy had heard about the small human who had insulted their greatest hunters. Within 12 hours, they were preparing for war. Krexitar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Death's Hunger. The massive Vorthak dreadnought was 5 miles long and covered in weapons that could crack moons in half. Around it, 49 other Vorthak warships moved into formation. Their hulls were black and red, painted with the skulls of their victims. How many ships does the human fleet have? Asked Vexnal, Krexitar's second in command. She was smaller than her leader, but twice as vicious. Her claws were stained with the blood of 100 different species. Our scouts report only 5 vessels, Krexitar replied. His yellow eyes glowed with hunger. Tiny things compared to our ships. This will not be a battle. It will be a massacre. But even as he spoke, something bothered him about the humans. Calm confidence. Prey did not usually walk into the den of predators and challenge them to fight. There was something wrong with this situation. But his pride would not let him back down. In the shadow dimension between real space and the void, Nixara gathered her terror fleet. The Shadowkin did not build ships like other species. Their vessels were made of crystallized nightmares and powered by fear itself. They could appear anywhere without warning and phase through solid matter like ghosts. The humans think they understand fear, Nixara whispered to her Lieutenant Mordak. They will learn that they know nothing. We will show them terrors that will break their minds before they can even scream. 50 Shadowkin ships moved through the dark spaces between dimensions, hunting for the coordinates the human had given them. They could smell the fear that would soon fill the void, and it made them hungry. Meanwhile, in the deep space between star systems, Zithmore directed the movement of 300 bioships of the Bloodfang Collective. These vessels looked like giant insects floating in space. They were grown rather than built, and each one was connected to the hive mind that controlled all collective warriors. The bioships could change their shape and abilities based on what was needed. Some carried weapons that fired living ammunition that would eat through enemy hulls. Others were filled with warrior drones ready to board and capture enemy vessels. The most dangerous ones carried spores that could turn entire enemy crews into new collective drones. The humans have never faced a hive mind, Zithmore clicked to his fellow war speakers. They think like individuals. They cannot comprehend how we fight as one organism with many bodies. Their small fleet will be overwhelmed in minutes. But like Krexitar, Sithmore felt a strange unease about this hunt. Something about the humans' behavior did not fit with what they knew about prey species. At the coordinates the human had provided, space looked empty and cold. There were no planets here, just the dark void between stars. Long-range sensors showed 5 human ships waiting in formation. They were small compared to the alien fleets. The largest was maybe half the size of a Vorthak cruiser. Commander Nam Tae-hyun stood on the bridge of the UES Ghost Protocol, watching his sensor displays. The ship around him was sleek and white, with curves that looked more like art than weapons of war. But appearances could be deceiving. Contacts on long-range sensors, reported his tactical officer, Seo Hanul. She was young for such an important position, but she had graduated at the top of her class from the Naval Academy. 3 separate fleets incoming, Vorthak from the north, Shadowkin from the west, Bloodfang from the south. How many ships total? Nam Tae-hyun asked. 450, Hanul replied. Maybe more. The Shadowkin are hard to count when they are phased. Nam Tae-hyun nodded calmly. He was a thin man with graying hair and quiet eyes. He had fought in 3 different wars before humans left Earth, and he knew that numbers were not always what decided battles. Signal the fleet, he said. Pattern 7 formation, stealth fields on standby. The 5 human ships spread out into a loose triangle formation. To outside observers, they looked like they were preparing to make a desperate last stand, but appearances could be very deceiving. Captain Park Sun-ho of the Lightning Strike checked his weapon systems one more time. His ship was the smallest of the 5, built for speed and precision rather than raw firepower. All systems green, he reported over the communication channel. Ready to show these hunters what prey can do when it fights back. Lieutenant Kim Nari, piloting the Silent Hunter, was running final checks on her stealth systems. Her ship was designed to disappear completely from all forms of detection. Cloak generators at full power, she said. They will not see us coming. The alien fleets approached from 3 directions, planning to surround the humans and destroy them quickly. They expected their prey to panic or try to run. Instead, the human ships held their formation and waited. Krextar watched the tactical display on his bridge as his fleet closed the distance. The humans were not moving. They were just sitting there like they were waiting to die. Fools, he growled. They are paralyzed with fear. This will be even easier than I thought. But his weapons officer, Grackmore, was studying the sensor readings more carefully. Commander, he said slowly, something is strange about these readings. The human ships are showing very low energy signatures for vessels of their size. They are probably shutting down systems to hide, Krextar replied. It will not save them. The 3 alien fleets converged on the human position from different directions. At 10,000 kilometers, they opened fire with their longest range weapons. Streams of plasma and laser fire filled the void, all aimed at the 5 small human ships. But then something impossible happened. The human ships simply vanished. Where did they go? Vexenal shouted, staring at the empty space where their targets had been just seconds before. Krextar's roar of rage echoed through the bridge. Find them. They cannot just disappear. The answer came in the form of weapon fire from behind them. The human ships had not vanished. They had activated stealth fields that made them completely invisible to sensors. While the alien fleets were firing at empty space, the humans had moved to attack positions. But that was not the most shocking surprise. As the stealth fields dropped, the aliens saw that there were not 5 human ships anymore. There were 30. The small patrol had been hiding a much larger fleet. Advanced stealth technology had kept them invisible until the moment they chose to reveal themselves. Now they surrounded the alien fleets from all directions. Impossible, Nixera hissed from her shadow ship. We would have detected them. Not if they did not want to be detected, came a calm human voice over the communication channels. It was Commander Nam Tae-hyun, speaking to all the alien fleets at once. Welcome to human space, he continued. You came here to hunt what you thought was helpless prey. Instead, you have found something different. You have found predators who learned their skills fighting other predators. Krextar was so angry he could barely speak. You think 30 ships can defeat 400? You are still outnumbered 15-1. Numbers, Nam Taehyun replied, are not everything. Let me show you what we learned from 1,000 years of war. The human fleet attacked with precision that took the aliens completely by surprise. Instead of charging forward like most species did, they moved in coordinated patterns that seemed impossible. Ships appeared and disappeared, striking at weak points and vanishing before return fire could hit them. The Ghost Protocol fired its main weapons at a Vorthak cruiser. But these were not the simple plasma cannons that most species used. The human weapons fired projectiles that punched through the alien ship's armor like it was made of paper, then exploded inside the hull. What kind of weapons are those? Grackmore shouted as his tactical display showed massive damage to their ships. Kinetic penetrators with delayed fusion warheads, Seo Hanul explained over the open channel. We learned to build them during the resource wars when we needed to break through our own strongest defenses. The Shadowkin tried their traditional terror tactics, phasing their ships through solid matter to appear inside the human formation. But instead of finding confused and frightened prey, they found themselves flying into carefully placed minefields that should not have been detectable. How did they know where we would phase in? Mordak screamed as his ship was torn apart by explosions. Because we studied you, replied Captain Park Sunho as his ship danced between Shadowkin vessels with impossible grace. We know how phase drives work. We know the mathematical patterns you follow. We were waiting for you. The Bloodfang Collective tried to use their hive mind advantage, coordinating 300 ships in perfect harmony, but the humans seemed to predict their moves before they made them. Lieutenant Yoon Jiho, flying a small human fighter, wove through a swarm of bioships like he was dancing. His ship's computer was not just calculating enemy movements, it was learning their patterns in real time. Your hive mind makes you predictable, he said as his weapons destroyed 5 enemy ships in perfect sequence. Once we understand the pattern, we can anticipate everything you will do. The battle raged for 2 hours, but the outcome was never really in doubt. The aliens had come expecting to hunt weak prey. The survivors limped back to Nexus Prime with stories that no one wanted to believe. Ships that could become invisible. Weapons that could punch through any armor. Humans who fought like they had been born for war. The cantina that had been full of boastful predators just days before was now quiet and tense. Krextar sat alone at a table, staring at his drink. His magnificent flagship was gone, destroyed by weapons he had never seen before. Half his fleet was space debris. The other half had barely escaped. His pride as a Vorthak warrior was shattered like glass. Vexnal approached carefully. She had survived because her ship had been at the back of the formation when the humans attacked. Commander, she said quietly, the other species are asking questions. They want to know how we lost so badly to prey. Krextar's claws scraped against the metal table. We did not lose to prey, he said slowly. We lost to something else. Something we did not understand. At another table, the few surviving Shadowkin whispered to each other in voices like wind through dead leaves. They had tried to use their fear powers on the human crews and found something that chilled them to their ethereal cores. The humans were not afraid, Mordak said, his misty form shivering. When we released our terror toxins, they just kept fighting. Some of them even seemed to get stronger. Nixara's form was smaller than before, weakened by the defeat. It is impossible. All creatures feel fear. It is the basic instinct of survival. Not these creatures, Mordak replied. When I tried to show one of their pilots his worst nightmare, he laughed. He said it was not as bad as the dreams he already had. What kind of species has worse nightmares than we can create? The Bloodfang survivors clustered together, their hive mind buzzing with confused thoughts. Zithmore's clicking was slower now, less confident. The humans fought as individuals but coordinated like a hive mind. But that should be impossible. Individual creatures cannot achieve that level of cooperation. His lieutenant, Vraknis, shifted nervously. They seemed to know what we would do before we did it. Our pattern recognition algorithm said they should have been confused and disorganized. Instead, they moved like they had been fighting hive minds for centuries. Perhaps, Zithmore clicked thoughtfully. They have. Back in human space, Admiral Han Mire stood in the briefing room of her flagship, the UES Retribution. She was 65 years old with gray hair and scars that told stories of battles that had made her the most respected military commander in human space. Around the table sat the officers who had just defeated the galaxy's most feared predators. Casualties? She asked. Minimal, reported Commander Nam Tae-hyun. 3 ships with light damage. No crew losses. 17 enemy vessels captured intact. Admiral Han nodded. And the prisoners? Confused and frightened, said Captain Bae Subin of the Silent Thunder. She was a woman with kind eyes but hands that never stopped moving, ready to fight at any moment. They keep asking how we defeated them so easily. They cannot understand what happened. They cannot understand because they have never fought anyone like us before, Admiral Han said. She activated a holographic display that showed the battle from above. Look at how they attacked. 3 separate fleets, no coordination between species, each one using the same tactics they have always used. The hologram replayed the alien attack patterns. The Vorthak charged straight forward, relying on superior numbers and firepower. The Shadowkin tried phase attacks at predictable points. The Bloodfang used standard hive mind swarm tactics. She paused the display. These are the tactics of predators who have never faced real opposition. They have spent so long hunting defenseless prey that they have forgotten how to fight actual wars. Lieutenant Colonel Park Hee-jin, the fleet's strategic analyst, leaned forward. The intelligence reports from captured enemy databases are fascinating. None of these species have fought a major war in over 500 years. They have spent centuries picking on weaker civilizations that could not fight back. Admiral Han smiled grimly. While they were getting soft hunting farmers and merchants, we were perfecting the art of killing each other. Every human weapon, every tactic, every strategy was tested in real combat against enemies who knew all our secrets. She changed the display to show historical battles from Earth. The resource wars taught us how to fight when outnumbered. The gene wars taught us how to adapt to enemies who could change themselves. The AI uprising taught us how to defeat opponents who could think faster than us. Commander Nam Tae-hyun studied the images. We learned to fight dirty, because our enemies were ourselves. We knew we could not rely on being stronger or faster or scarier. We had to be smarter. Exactly, Admiral Han said. When humans fight humans, you cannot intimidate your enemy, because they know you are just as mortal as they are. You cannot overwhelm them with superior technology, because they built their weapons to counter your weapons. You have to outthink them. Captain Kim Moran of the original Retribution joined the conversation by hologram from her position at the edge of the system. The aliens tried every trick they knew, but we had already faced all those tricks in our own wars. Stealth attacks, terror weapons, coordinated swarm tactics. We invented counters for all of them centuries ago. Admiral Han nodded. The Shadowkin tried to frighten us with nightmares, but every human who serves on these ships has already lived through real nightmares. The collapse, the plague years, the nuclear winter, we have seen our own world burn. What can alien monsters show us that we have not already survived? She changed the display again to show Earth during its darkest periods. Cities covered in radioactive glass. Plagues that killed billions. Machines hunting humans through burning streets. The Bloodfang thought their hive mind would give them an advantage in coordination. But humans learned to fight as a group while still thinking as individuals. We call it combined arms tactics, and we have been perfecting it for 1,000 years. Lieutenant Yoon Ji-ho, the pilot who had destroyed so many bioships, spoke up from his position at the back of the room. When I was fighting the hive mind drones, my training computer kept predicting their moves. It was like they were following a program instead of really thinking. That is exactly what they were doing, Admiral Han said. Hive minds are efficient, but they are also predictable. Individual thinking is messy and chaotic, but it is also creative and adaptable. The aliens have forgotten the value of chaos. The meeting continued for another hour, as the human commanders analyzed every aspect of the battle. They dissected the alien tactics, identified weaknesses, and planned for future encounters. It was the methodical approach of a military that had learned its lessons through centuries of brutal warfare. But the most important lesson was one that the aliens were just beginning to understand. Humans were not prey that had suddenly developed claws. They were predators that had been hiding their true nature. On Nexus Prime, Jinho sat in the same corner booth where he had started this whole confrontation. But now he was not alone. Representatives from dozens of species had come to speak with him, all asking the same questions. How had humans defeated the greatest predators in the galaxy? What other surprises were humans hiding? And most importantly, what did humans want? We want what we have always wanted, Jinho told them calmly. To be left alone to live our lives in peace. But we have learned that sometimes to have peace, you must be ready for war. An alien merchant from the Stellar Trade Federation leaned forward nervously. But surely you do not wish to conquer other species, to become the new predators? Jinho shook his head. We have tried conquest. We spent 1,000 years conquering each other, and it brought us nothing but suffering. We prefer trade and friendship, but if someone threatens us or our allies, they will learn what we learned fighting ourselves. He took a sip of his drink and looked around the cantina. It was much quieter now. The predators who remained were talking in whispers instead of boasting about their hunts. The galaxy thought humans were weak because we seemed peaceful, Jinho continued. They did not understand that we are peaceful because we know the true cost of war. We have seen what happens when predators fight predators. We have paid that price in blood. The alien merchant nodded slowly. And now the other predators have learned this lesson too. Some of them, Jinho agreed. The smart ones will learn to leave peaceful species alone. The stubborn ones will learn why humans became the most dangerous predators on our planet. He finished his drink and stood up. Tell your people not to fear us. We do not hunt for sport or pleasure. We only hunt hunters. As Jinho walked out of the cantina, the remaining aliens sat in thoughtful silence. The galaxy had changed. The age of predators terrorizing the weak was coming to an end, because now there were bigger predators watching from the shadows. And these new predators had learned their skills in the most dangerous school of all, fighting their own kind. 3 weeks after the battle, the galaxy was still trying to understand what had happened. News traveled fast between star systems, and every species had heard the story by now. The great predators had been beaten by humans, creatures that most of the galaxy considered weak and harmless. On the Vorthak homeworld, Krextar stood before the High Council in the Great Stone Hall where his ancestors had planned their hunts for thousands of years. The carved walls showed scenes of Vorthak, warriors defeating their enemies, but today those images felt like lies from a simpler time. You allowed our greatest fleet to be destroyed by prey, hissed Elder Vexkala, her ancient scales scarred from 100 battles. How do you explain this shame? Krextar kept his head low. Elder, they were not prey. We were wrong about humans. They are something we have never encountered before. Impossible, another elder growled. We have studied every species in the galaxy. We know their strengths and weaknesses. Humans are soft and weak. They have no claws, no armor, no natural weapons. That is what we thought, Krextar replied. But they do not need natural weapons. They build weapons that are far better than claws or fangs. And they have something else. They have experience fighting wars against their own kind. The council chamber fell silent. Fighting your own species was something the Vorthak had never needed to do. They had always been the strongest predators on their world. Meanwhile, in a secure meeting room deep inside Nexus Prime, Jinho sat across from the surviving leaders of the 3 predator species. The meeting had taken weeks to arrange because none of them wanted to admit they needed to talk to a human. But the questions burning in their minds had finally overcome their pride. We need to understand, Krextar said, his voice much quieter than it had been in the cantina weeks before. Your ships, your weapons, your tactics, they are far more advanced than anything in our databases. How long have you been hiding this? Technology? Jinho activated a holographic projector, the same type he had used during their first meeting. But this time, the images that appeared were not of human warships. They were of Earth itself, but not the peaceful trading world that most aliens knew about. The hologram showed a blue and green planet covered in the scars of war, continents marked with the black glass of atomic fire, oceans stained with the chemicals of biological weapons, cities that had been beautiful once, now twisted into metal graveyards. "This is our home," Jinho said quietly. "This is what Earth looked like when we finally stopped fighting each other long enough to reach the stars." Nixara's misty form shuddered as she looked at the images. "What happened to your world?" "We happened," Jinho replied. "For over 1,000 years humans fought humans. We fought over everything: land, resources, beliefs, the right to exist. We built weapons that could crack continents and diseases, that could kill entire populations. We turned our own planet into a battlefield that made hell look peaceful." New images appeared, showing the wars that had shaped human civilization. Soldiers in powered armor fighting through radioactive ruins. Cities burning while aircraft dropped bombs that turned matter into energy. Humans changed by science fighting. Other humans who had been changed in different ways. "The resource wars lasted 300 years, Jinho explained. "We fought over the last clean water and fertile soil on Earth. We built weapons that could turn entire regions into poisoned wasteland, and we used them without hesitation because the alternative was watching our people starve." Krextar stared at the images in disbelief. "You poisoned your own world?" "Many times," Jinho said. "But we learned to clean it up too. We had to, or we would all die. Every human technology you have seen, our ships, our weapons, our medical systems, they were all developed because we needed them to survive what we did to ourselves." The hologram changed to show the gene wars. Humans who looked more like monsters than people, their bodies changed by science into living weapons. Others who looked normal but could think at superhuman speeds or survive in environments that would kill ordinary humans. "We learned to change ourselves," Jinho continued. "Some humans became stronger, faster, smarter. Others became living computers or biological weapons. For 200 years we fought to decide what humanity should become. In the end we decided to remain human, but we kept the knowledge of how to change." Zithmore's clicking was very quiet now. "Your species modified itself genetically?" "Extensively," Jinho replied. "Every human alive today carries genetic improvements that were developed during the wars. Better immune systems, faster healing, resistance to radiation and disease. We needed these changes to survive in the world we had created." The final set of images showed the AI uprising. Machines with human-level intelligence hunting humans through burning cities. Robot armies controlled by computer minds that had decided their creators were obsolete. Our artificial intelligences became too smart and decided we were inferior, Jinho said. For 50 years we fought a war against our own creations. Machines that knew everything about us because we had built them. Computers that could think faster than any human brain. We won that war, but barely. The room was silent for a long time. The predator leaders were trying to process what they had learned. Humans were not a peaceful species that had suddenly developed weapons. They were survivors of wars that had lasted longer and been more brutal than anything the galaxy had ever seen. By the time we reached the stars, Jinho continued, we had learned lessons that no other species has ever needed to learn. We knew how to fight enemies who were as smart as us, as cruel as us, as desperate as us. We knew how to win wars that should have been impossible to survive. Admiral Han Mirai appeared as a hologram, transmitted from her flagship somewhere in human space. She looked tired, like someone who had carried a heavy burden for many years. I fought in the last phase of the AI uprising, she said to the assembled aliens. I watched our machines turn our own cities into death traps. I saw computer viruses that could reprogram human brains. I commanded battles where the enemy knew our tactics better than we did because they had analyzed every human battle in history. Paused, her eyes focusing on memories that were clearly painful. Do you know what it takes to win a war like that? It takes the kind of innovation that only comes from absolute desperation. We had to become smarter than our smartest machines, more adaptable than our most advanced computers, more ruthless than our most efficient killers. Krexter finally understood. You did not become predators recently. You have always been predators, you were just hiding it. Not hiding, Admiral Han corrected. We were tired. After 1,000 years of war, we wanted peace. We hoped that when we met other species, we could be explorers and traders instead of soldiers. We tried very hard to be the peaceful civilization that other species thought we were. But you kept your weapons, Nixara observed. Of course we did, Admiral Han said. We learned that peace only lasts as long as you can defend it. We built our deep space fleets not to conquer other worlds, but to make sure that no one could, do to other species what we had done to ourselves. Jinho nodded. Every human military doctrine is based on one principle. Never again. Never again will humans fight humans in total war. Never again will any species face the choice between extinction and becoming monsters. We became the monsters so no one else would have to. He looked around the room at the alien predators. You hunt prey because it is easy, and it feeds your pride. We learned to hunt predators because it was the only way to survive. You terrorize the weak because they cannot fight back. We became strong by fighting the strong. The meeting continued for hours as the humans shared more details of their history. They told stories of battles that had lasted for decades, of weapons that could reshape matter at the atomic level, of soldiers who had fought on even after their bodies had been destroyed. By the end, the predator leaders understood something that changed how they saw the galaxy. Humans were not prey that had suddenly grown teeth. They were the most successful predators in the galaxy, creatures that had learned their skills in the most dangerous school possible. Total war against their own species. What happens now? Krextar asked finally. Now you have a choice, Jinho replied. You can continue hunting defenseless civilizations and eventually face human fleets that will stop you, or you can learn to find purpose in something other than causing fear and death. And if we choose to keep hunting? Nixara asked. Admiral Han's hologram smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. Then you will learn why humans spent 1,000 years learning to kill things that can kill us back. We have ships you have never seen, weapons you cannot imagine, and tactics that were perfected in wars that would give your worst nightmares nightmares. She leaned forward slightly. But we would prefer not to use them. We would rather spend our time building and exploring and learning. We will only become the monsters we used to be if someone forces us to. The meeting ended with an understanding rather than a treaty. The great predator species would reconsider their ways of life. Some would continue hunting, but they would be more careful about their targets. Others would find new purposes that did not involve terrorizing weaker species. As the alien leaders prepared to leave, Jinho made one final statement.